Chapter 103. Measurement of the whale's skeleton. In the first place, I wish to lay before you a particular plain statement touching the living bulk of this leviathan, whose skeleton we are briefly to exhibit. Such a statement may prove useful here. According to a careful calculation I have made, which I partly base upon Captain Scoresby's estimate of 70 tons for the largest Greenland whale of 60 feet in length, according to my careful calculation, I say a sperm whale of the largest magnitude, between 85 and 90 feet in length, and somewhat less than 40 feet in its fullest circumference, such a whale will weigh at least 90 tons, so that, reckoning 13 men to a ton, he would considerably outweigh the combined population of a whole village of 1,100 inhabitants. Think you then not the brains like yoked cattle should be put to this leviathan to make him at all budge at any landsman's imagination. Having already in various ways put before you his skull, spout hole, jaw, teeth, tail, forehead, fins, and other divers parts, I shall now simply point out that what is most interesting in the general bulk of his unobstructed bones. But as the colossal skull embraces so very large a proportion of the entire extent of the skeleton, as it is by far the most complicated part, and as nothing is yet to be repeated concerning it in this chapter, you must not fail to carry it in your mind or under your arm as we proceed. Otherwise you will not gain a complete notion of the general structure we are about to review. In length, the sperm whale's skeleton at Trank measured 72 feet. So that when fully invested and extended in life, he must have been 90 feet long, for in the whale the skeleton loses about 1/5 in length compared with the living body. Of this 72 feet, his skull and jaw comprise some 20 feet, leaving some 50 feet of plain backbone. Attached to this backbone for something less than a third of its length was the mighty circular basket of ribs which once enclosed its vitals. To me, this vast ivory-ribbed chest, with the long, unrelieved spine extending far away from it in a straight line, not a little resembled the hull of a great ship newly laid upon the stocks, when only some 20 of her naked bow ribs are inserted, and the keel is otherwise for a time but a long disconnected timber. The ribs were 10 on a side. The first, to begin from the neck, was nearly 6 feet long. The second, third, and fourth were each successively longer, until you came to the climax of the fifth, or one of the middle ribs, which measured 8 feet and some inches. From that part the remaining ribs diminished till the 10th and last spanned only 5 feet and some inches. In general thickness they seemingly corresponded to their length. The middle ribs were the most arched. In some of the Arthritis they are used for beams whereupon to lay footpath bridges over small streams. In considering these ribs, I could not be struck anew with the circumstances, so variously repeated in this book, that the skeleton of a whale is by no means the mold of his invested form. The largest of the Trank ribs, one of the middle ones, occupied that part of the fish which, in life, is greatest in depth. Now, the greatest depth of the invested body of this particular whale must have been at least 16 feet, whereas the corresponding rib measured little more than 8 feet, so that this rib only conveyed half of the true notion of the living magnitude of that part. Besides, for some way where I now saw but a naked spine, all that had been once wrapped round with tons of added bulk and flesh, muscle, bone, and bowels, still more for the ample fins, I saw here but a few disordered joints, and in a place of weighty and majestic but boneless flukes, an utter blank. How vain and foolish, then, thought I, for timid, untravelled man to try and comprehend aright this wondrous whale, by merely poring over his dead attenuated skeleton, stretched in this peaceful wood. No, only in the heart of the quickest perils, only within the eddyings of his angry flukes, only on the profound unbounded sea, can the fully invested whale be truly and livingly found out. But the spine, for that, the best we can consider it is, with a crane, to pile its bones high upon end. No speedy enterprise, but now it's done, it looks much like Pompey's pillar. For there are 40 and odd vertebrae in all, which is in the skeleton not locked together. They mostly lie like great knobbed blocks on a Gothic spire, forming solid courses of heavy masonry. The largest, the middle one, is in width something less than 3 feet, and in depth more than 4. The smallest, where the spine tapers away to the tail, is only 2 inches in width and looks something like a white billiard ball. I was told that there were still smaller ones, but they had been lost by some little cannibal urchins, the priest's children, who had stolen them to play marbles with. Thus we see how the spine of even the hugest of living things tapers off at last, but into simple child's play. This is the end of chapter 103. So they have the whole skeleton measured out. And he says that in some places they use the ribs for bridges. So there's a lot of places where you have a little stream that's 3-4 feet across and you want to bridge it. And that's something short enough that you can put a plank across. And a 2 or 3 inch board, a 2-inch board, 2x4, is rigid enough to support a person's weight going across a 4-foot gap, 3-foot gap. Now, the longer the gap, you need a thicker board, you need more of them. But a 4-foot, 8-foot gap is enough. And so what they can do is they can take a left rib and a right rib of the whale and line it up like this and make 2 arches, and then they put cross beams, just nail the cross beams into the rib bones, and so they can make a bridge that has a slight little arch to it, and having the slight little arch to it stiffens it and makes it stronger. Because when you put force down on an arch, force goes down on the top of the arch, and the arch unbends and the sides push out. So it doesn't just support the weight. You can push in to lift up the center. And so what that does is by pushing in, you can lift up the center, and it changes the stresses, and it makes it... There are big advantages to building an arch into a bridge. And if you don't build an arch into a bridge, once you start loading it, it starts bowing down the other way. And that's uncontrolled. While when you arch it up like this, that's controlled. And controlling is a good thing in engineering. And so he talks about the whale losing length from just being bones. And the thing is that there's cartilage between most of your bones. Your bones don't rub together, because when your bones rub together, that's very painful. When you get old and you start getting arthritis, and the cartilage wears out, and the bones start rubbing together. When the bones rub together, they grind down and they break, and that hurts. When I say break, it's not like you break a bone, but the ends kind of get these little fractures, and so it's not pleasant when the bones rub together. So there's this stuff called cartilage between them. And cartilage is soft and squishy. Your nose is cartilage. Your ears are made out of cartilage. So it's kind of firm, but it has some give to it. And so you have these cartilage pads between bones. And your spine has all of these cartilage pads between all the bones in your spinal column. And that allows you to twist and turn like this, because the bones don't rest on each other, the bones don't fuse together. Now, some people, when they injure their back, when they injure their back really bad and the cartilage discs break, they take out the cartilage discs and they fuse the spinal bones together, and the person gets a little bit shorter. But the thing is that stops the pain of the things rubbing in ways that they shouldn't, and impinging on the spinal column. And so cartilage discs. I told you about seeing the beached whale in Assateague. There was a disc from the spinal column that was this big. It was huge, absolutely huge. Part of me wanted to take it. Part of me knew that it was illegal, and the government said, no, you can't take anything off of Assateague. So, you aren't allowed to collect things. You aren't actually allowed to own whalebone because it's an endangered species. And even if it died of natural causes, there's all of this paperwork for just having a piece of it. And even that you're not really supposed to have. So, yeah, whalebone. And that is it.